Voilà, merci beaucoup. Alors, une petite introduction sur Journalisme de solutions et après, je passerai la main à Jonathan. En 2004, quand pour la première fois j'ai adressé ce sujet, on avait fait une grande conférence avec 1400 personnes, 400 journalistes. Et il y a eu beaucoup de scepticisme. On comparait, voilà, c'était beaucoup, mais c'est bisounours, journalistes de solutions. Et notamment, il y avait à l'époque le patron de Libé qui disait mais c'est pas comme ça qu'on va doper nos ventes. Et du coup, on l'avait convaincu de faire un numéro de Libé sur les solutions. Alors, il a choisi le 26 décembre, qui était le jour le moins risqué de l'année. Et ça a été la meilleure vente de l'année. Les journalistes, on l'avait fait avec des freelances, les journalistes étaient assez réticents. Et quand ils ont vu le résultat, ils se sont dit mais en fait c'était vraiment bien, des beaux sujets. Et donc ils ont continué eux-mêmes. Et donc quand j'ai créé Sparknews, on s'est dit on va le faire avec les médias du monde entier. Donc on a créé plusieurs opérations collaboratives avec des grands médias. Donc à chaque fois il y a une cinquantaine de médias, Les Echos, le FT, El País, Der Spiegel, etc. Où on unit nos forces, chacun contribue avec des contenus et tout le monde publie les contenus de tout le monde, ce qui permet de faire more with less et de toucher chaque année à peu près 300 millions de personnes. Et pas mal de nos médias partenaires se sont appropriés la démarche. Je pense notamment au Corriere della Sera qui a fait un supplément sur l'économie sociale et solidaire. Tous les mardis, ils encartent un supplément, une trentaine de pages dans l'édition principale et tous les mardis, ils vendent 10 000 exemplaires de plus, ce qui prouve qu'il y a un succès. Et puis même SRF, la télé suisse avec qui on a initié la démarche et après qui ont dit on va le faire tous les vendredis soirs dans notre news magazine, de prendre cet angle, parler des problèmes et des solutions, puisqu'en fait ces sujets souvent génèrent pas mal d'anxiété et le journalisme de solutions est une façon de répondre, de ne pas nier les problèmes, mais de montrer qu'il y a des solutions qui existent. À la BBC, ils ont aussi lancé cette démarche. Il y a plusieurs programmes qui sont portés notamment par Émilie Kesriel, dont c'est la mission à la BBC, notamment un qui s'appelle People Fixing the World. Voilà. Et Jonathan Paterson, you are the editor, the video editor of BBC News. You deal with the daily news. Actually, you use solution journalism without naming it this way, but you say it works, that it's useful in your approach. How did you get the idea of using this approach, and how does it work?
So, look, I think the solutions journalism is a very successful model. We're hosted by you in Sparknews today, and a successful business model, and we've got our own programming. You mentioned People Fixing the World. On specialist platforms, it's alive and well. My interest, as you say, is about how we transfer these learnings into the daily news cycle. How do we transfer solutions journalism into natural disasters, war, political crisis? These stories are not going away, and they will always remain the duty of news organisations to shine a light and to report the world as it is and not how we want it to be. So we've thought very hard about this and thought about the importance of solutions journalism, particularly in a world where we need to deliver to social media. The world of the feed, the world of choice, where you are the editor yourselves and where people want to shape the world with positive reflections of themselves. That's where a lot of my work is now directed, and we need to make sure that we're reaching audiences. So what I'm trying to do today is set out a case for how it can be one of the tools in the armoury of the daily news journalist, and look at how we can use it to engage with new audiences. So I've got a few videos to show you today. I thought we'd start with something which is more familiar territory, the journalism that we all know so well. Here's an example of BBC reportage from the summer, which I hope we've got the video ready to play. It's a natural disaster that was playing out in front of our eyes.
So do you have the sound?
Since we have no sound. Right. Well, I'll continue. So this is one of our reporters flying over the Amazon. He is reporting on the fires as they're burning. Fairly traditional reportage. We'll just let that play. I think just play the video, and we'll come to the next bit. So there you can see we're reporting the disaster. You can see it very clearly. If you could hear the audio, he'd be describing what you can see, the size and the scale of it, and right, if we can pause the video there. So, that is something of which the BBC is quite rightfully proud, apart from the fact we can't hear any sound. It's our own reporter on the ground, an eyewitness to tragedy unfolding below them, eloquently described. And in the cutthroat world of international news, that is a success. And there's always going to be a rush to get there first, to seek out the tragedy, to tell the story. But at the BBC, we're also starting to ask new answers. And our audience research told us that the Amazon fires was one of the most engaged stories for younger audiences. But how do we continue to tell that story beyond the initial shock and the horror? How do we respond in the world of the like button? How do you like the Amazon fires? That's the hard question that we face. So months on, the fires are continuing to burn. How do we as a news organisation continue to tell that story? So our team in Brazil found the people who are making the difference. So if you can play the next bit of video.
Está saindo agora pro combate. O fogo tá grande, mas estamos preparados. Vamos que vamos, Amazônia viva. Nossa floresta sendo destruída, pessoal. We are part of the volunteer brigade in Altar do Chão.
Pause. So that for me is another more positive way of telling the story, continuing to keep the story in the public consciousness while also providing a story about some of the people making a difference. The next question for me is about how we use solutions to tell the stories that are already in the public consciousness and tell them in a new and interesting way. So take plastics. One of the strongest, some of the strongest images of the last year, plastics polluting our seas, washing up on pristine beaches. The public is very shocked by the images, but they're also rightly asking what can be done about it. We found some answers in Norway. So that film has had over 17 million views. It's had given more than 50,000 comments and shared 239 times. So audience expectations are changing and we need to adapt with them too. And we're really pleased with the response to that video, which is a solution video to a problem which has been well documented. In the UK, we've government spending cuts, austerity as they were known, have been harder to cover than ever we thought. Public services, social care, public transport, libraries, day-to-day infrastructure have been disappearing overnight. And as these were services provided by local government and often just one library closing or one bus route closing, we never really covered these as a national story, and they were often dismissed. And when these services had literally disappeared, there was nothing for us to film. It was a really difficult story for us to cover, but we found a way to do that through solutions. So the people who are looking for something that will make a difference. Here's a story of one community that dealt with the cuts to their local bus services. So it was a very simple story about one person making a difference, making a change, and it also enabled us to tell a story about the bus cuts and the local transport cuts in the UK that we were really struggling to do. As I've said, I think seeking solutions is just one element of our reporting armoury, and I'm not saying that reporting should only give us solutions, but it can be a simple device for a reporter to explain a situation. If we look at the situation in Venezuela, in the past year, we've seen lots of images of residents in Venezuela eating from dust carts. But when a third reporter in a row has come back from Venezuela with that story, we have to look for other ways to do it. So here's an example of BBC reportage, for which I think that the BBC is well known, but how we used solutions journalism to, or some of the principles of solutions journalism to tell a story about what was happening there. Now, I know that in some of our traditional television reporting, we would have just reported that woman's story, interviewing her and her telling us about how she was struggling to get access to drugs, and how we actually here, we managed to tell the story in a slightly different way about the people who are coming together to try and make a difference for her. And I think that's just a little tiny insight into how you can put that into ordinary reportage, really tell people about the experience of what's going on. And I think the human capacity to survive in these situations is great. And we sometimes underestimate that in an attempt to try and tell the story of the tragedy. That film had over 3 million views on our YouTube channel. So it certainly helped increase the access to the story. And finally, I wanted to end on a thought that this is a reminder to cautious news editors that this isn't just about positive news. We're not here to sugarcoat the world, but give people the tools to equip themselves and take forward the debate. So I'm going to show you one final example of reportage. You'll be very familiar with the opioid crisis in North America. Here's a report we did from Vancouver. I'm sorry, you probably can't hear this one without the voice track. This drug here is a drug that addicts take with them, which is an antidote to opioid abuse. So in Vancouver, they have introduced this drug, which will they've put it out on the street, and addicts take the drug around with them, and if they're at risk of overdosing or their friends are at risk of overdosing, they can take that as an antidote, and it's saved hundreds of lives in Vancouver. Now, my point here is that you're not left in any doubt about the opioid crisis in North America. It's very firmly there in front of you in that report. But we're also able to tell the story about the city that's making a difference. We've not shied away from the story about opioid abuse in North America. It's very much there. But we're also able to tell you the story about the people who are trying to make a difference. And I think up until now, a lot of our reporting had focused just on the endless cycle of tragedy and death. And I think it was really important that we were able to tell that story in a very different way. Okay. And I think that's in the best traditions of journalism.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to conclude here. Christian, do you want to add a final word?
Well, we cannot ask a question to the audience.
Okay, one question.
Yeah, but very short, and,
yes.
and Jonathan will answer shortly. Do you have a question? Yeah. Oui. La question c'est est-ce que les solutions qui sont apportées sont pas Okay. So she's asking if those stories aren't just small drops to the ocean of the problems.
Yes. I think we need to find new ways of telling the stories of tragedies, because the stories of tragedies are not getting through to people. It's really important for journalism that we tell the stories of the Amazon, of the opioid crisis, of the cuts to bus services in the UK. But those stories are quite difficult to tell, and solutions journalism is just one of the ways that we can get people engaged in them, particularly on social media. And I think if we can tell stories of inspiration, of people with practical solutions to problems, then that just gives us one way in which we can tell those stories in a different way. This is in part about changing audiences, dealing with changing audiences' perceptions about stories and expectations around content. And it is a drop in the ocean, but it is, I think it's important that we start to make a difference.
Merci
beaucoup.
Thank you
very much. Alors, en l'occurrence, nous, chez Sparknews, on source des solutions justement qui ont le plus d'impact possible. Voilà, mais je pense qu'il n'y a pas toujours des grandes solutions aux problèmes. Et, voilà, et typiquement, le supplément qu'on fait avec les Echos et d'autres grands médias sont plutôt sur des solutions les plus importantes possibles, surtout si elles sont répliquées. Merci beaucoup. On va passer à une autre session animée par mon équipe Sparknews, et je laisse Audrey l'introduire. Merci beaucoup.